Hi, my name is Nabong, and my humanitarian pitch is on developing an interactive adaptation policy tool to empower climate resiliency. This work is based on research that I've done during my PhD at the University of Sydney, where I look at the impacts of climate change in the Pacific. Climate change is said to be the biggest threat that we as a global population will face in the 21st century. Around the world, the impacts of climate change are already being felt. Impacts like flooding, drought, and extreme heat are all hazards that we can expect to increase in the coming decades and years. In my research, I work with partners in the Pacific to better understand the impacts of climate change on those communities. Specifically, I work with partners in Kiribati, a country located to the northeast of Australia and made up of 32 atolls and one coral island. In Kiribati, population pressures, along with sea level rise, salinization, and other hazards, put climate change and adaptation at the forefront of future planning. In practice, there's often a gap between scientific research and policy. Time constraints, especially those for busy government workers, can limit the ability to engage with climate science when making adaptation plans. The purpose of this work is to develop a tool to support policymakers in engaging with long-term strategic planning for climate change adaptation choices. The tool developed in this work is a quantitative model that was built from a lot of qualitative discussions with my local partners in Kiribati. In my research, I emphasize the importance of engaging and co-developing with local partners in order to really ground the research in the realities of those living with the impacts of climate change. During my PhD, I've better understood the impacts of climate change in Kiribati through interviews, workshop insights, as well as reading about the findings from other researchers. While the model development is still ongoing, I'll just show an example of how it would be expected to look. The tool interface will look something similar to this, with options to toggle on and adjust policies on the left side, and with outputs coming up as graphs and figures on the right. For example, let's simulate the water deficit, so how much water is lacking based on needs and supply. If we run these values, we can see that later this century, we might expect a large increase in water insecurity. However, Kiribati is also in the process of building desalination plants in South Tarawa, where the capital is. So let's test out how these plants might affect the water deficit. And we can see that, as we might expect, the addition of desalination plants has largely decreased the water deficit later this century. Likewise, we can also simulate the impact of sea level rise on land loss. So if we simulate this, we can see that later this century, we might expect a decline in land area. However, we can also test the reclamation rates, which give us a good idea of the policy that's needed to stabilize and increase the land area in Kiribati. So I only gave two examples here of the tool's outputs, but this tool also includes other metrics like housing, health, and income. One of the benefits of using a tool that's inclusive to so many types of sectors is that we can make future plans with knowledge of how they relate to each other, with which we can hopefully avoid actions that benefit one area while unintentionally harming another. So while this tool is specific to Kiribati, the idea of an adaptation planning tool is something that would be helpful in creating sustainable cities and communities around the world. Thank you.